So many people have said to me in the last few years, yeah, but we need oil, and why? You know, I bet you travel by car. And the answer is actually I don't. 3 years ago I owned a camper van and I sold it. And I thought I'm going to see how long I can manage without for. And now I cycle, I walk, I take public transport. And I'll get lifts from people to places, or I might take an occasional taxi. But I can manage without a car. Okay, you know, old bat here, retired, without children to take here and there and everywhere. But, you know, I think back to my youth. Oh dear, I thought I would never say that. But you know, when I were a little and it was so exciting when my dad got a car when I was about 12. And it was revolutionary. But before then, we managed. The kids got to school. I seem to remember we walked. And we got the shopping. And Dad got to work. So it is possible. It's just another way of thinking. And if you take time out of the equation, you've got to be there on time, got to do this, got to do that, and just allow yourself a bit longer to get there. And I mean, you know, here am I cycling probably 5 days out of 7, and I can do this walk. I'm fit enough to do it. And that's a huge bonus when I see all my friends of around my same age, and they're all saying, oh, I could never do that. And they can't. I mean, for some people, they can't help it. They've got this awful whatever it is that's stopping them walking. But so many people just don't get that exercise. So there we go again. Law of unintended consequences. You know, you get a bike, use the cycle tracks, be really, really visible, signal clearly, and just take a deep breath and try it out. So anyway, thank you. Morning. I'm 90 minutes into my day 5 and have just started walking along the Sussex Ouse Way and stopped here because there is this most beautiful stream which we can all enjoy while I rabbit on. And I've been thinking as I was walking today about the law of unintended consequences. In my 40s, I went on a sponsored bike ride through Romania from south to north shortly after Ceausescu was deposed, and the whole country was just not quite aware of what was happening and almost shell-shocked that at last they had this freedom. And we were cycling to get money for a tractor to be run as part of a cooperative in northern Romania, which sounds absolutely wonderful. Until then, it was like a scene from the 1900s with loads of villagers all out with their scythes and so on, and harvesting by hand. But we bought the tractor. The problem was unintended consequences. Everybody wanted the tractor for the same thing at the same time, so that caused friction within the community. And when it went wrong, what happened? There weren't people with the mechanical knowledge or people with spare parts, and there wasn't enough diesel fuel to run it. So the end result was that people went back to harvesting by hand. And it's just a thought, unintended consequences. Whatever people do, you've got to think through it and through it and through it. And back to the legal thing again, the legal appeal. It's considered so carefully that you feel there aren't unintended consequences. And the reality of what Sarah Finch is doing is real and will last for a very, very long time if the appeal is upheld. And of course have huge intended consequences, which can only be good. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to wrap it on a bit now because it is my lunch break and I feel entitled. And I'm just thinking again about my grandchildren and their health. I have 2 sons. The older one is age 43. He's a keen cyclist. He cycles as much as he possibly can. He actually did the Everest Challenge at Denbies, for those of you who know it, cycling up and down that hill there for, was it 36 hours? It was amazing. He'd cycled the height of Everest by the time he'd finished it. He's that healthy, and yet he's gone on to an inhaler. He carries one with him in case he needs it. What's happening here? There's no asthma in our family. There's no lung problems, and he's so healthy. And I just think of the health implications of what we're breathing in. And poor little children, if you've ever seen a child coping with an asthma attack, it is horrible. And yet we're burning so much oil, so much petrol, and just wrecking our environment. It's dreadful. And I think I'm going to have to stop now and eat a sandwich. Back into woodland, thank goodness. And I'm stopping now to have lunch with some delicious sandwiches from Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. And I'm thinking, I want this woodland to be around when my grandchildren grow old enough to appreciate it and wander themselves. So much of this woodland must have been cleared to create those huge, great, monstrous fields. And then there's the thought of the huge fires. I mean, even in sort of local Surrey, there have been colossal great fires, and all the fire brigades have had to go out onto, was it Cobham Heath, to put them out. And it's not just locally, it's everywhere. Look at California. Look at Australia. Look at Siberia. A friend of mine, Caro, lives in Alaska, and she said there a short Alaskan summer has been wrecked because of all the clouds of smoke coming over from Siberia. And at the very least, this is our health. It's the beauty, it's the eco implications of all these fires. What wildlife has been lost? What species have been wiped out? I mean, I'm not even thinking about Amazon and what's going on in places like Ecuador, where unknown species are disappearing. So it's vital that we lower the temperature of the world, we stop the global warming, and that we take the climate emergency so seriously and keep oil in the ground. I'm only an hour away from Balcombe, hooray! And again, while I was walking, I was thinking about NIMBYism, not in my backyard. Nothing to do with the good people of Balcombe, nothing to do with any oil protesters or protesters about anything, but not in my backyard. Big question, how big is your backyard? Does it reach past your street, past your town, your county, your country, Europe, the world? We all need to think more about how big is our backyard. And now I'm carrying on walking because there's people waiting for me at Balcombe. Oh, it's time for a little rest while we're about it. Please have a look at my t-shirt. There is no Planet B. And that's all about how big is our backyard, because it does extend over the whole planet. And I'd like to just briefly tell you about Derege. He's an orphan who I met when I was teaching in Ethiopia. And while I was there, he reached the age of 16, which meant he had to leave the orphanage. And he did that with, I think it was 8 other friends. And they tried to stay together as much as they could. And I did support Derege, I still do. He's not particularly clever, but he's very hardworking, and all he wants to do is earn a decent living. And I said to him last year, I think it was, oh, what about the other people that you left the orphanage with? And he said 3 of them have gone over the border into Somalia, and they've joined the fighters there. and he said 2 of them have just disappeared. I don't know where, but I suspect they've gone to try their luck becoming migrants because they cannot get a job. He said 2 of them are dead for various reasons, but he said none of us have been able to get a decent job. We don't have the family connections, we don't have any money, we haven't had a very good education. And I just feel I can understand what they're up to in wanting to leave Ethiopia, and his desperate need is to leave Ethiopia. He just keeps saying, oh please, please write and invite me. I know he won't even get a visa. But there's so many people in our backyard who are like that. And every person who wants to be a migrant or who becomes one, they've all got stories to tell about deprivation, suffering, war, famine, and it's all happening in our backyard.